So I'm going to describe the Battle of Naupactus, which is, let me find it, which is basically a very interesting one. So so while I'm doing this, I'm going to start describing it. It is the year 430 BC. The Peloponnesian War started already, and Athens is devastated by coronavirus 430 BC. They had the plague, which killed 1/3 of the population. Pericles, the leader of Athens, is dead, and the Athenians are really not sure what to do. But they had to raise a navy, and they did raise a navy, and they sent this old, experienced admiral by the name of Phormio to the Corinthian, around the Peloponnese, into the Corinthian Gulf, to prevent the Spartans from taking their ships out of the Corinthian Gulf and into the Ionian Islands. So that's where we're going to start the story. So let's see. Share the screen. So here we are. So bear with me. Okay. So Phormio left Athens, and he went around the Peloponnese into Naupactus. You see Naupactus there. It's in the middle of the, I guess, the big white circle. So give me a second. I'm synchronizing everything. So Admiral Phormio was sent out to the Corinthian Gulf as a commander of a fleet of 20 triremes to prevent the Spartans from attacking the Ionian Islands and western mainland. Phormio established his base in Naupactus and instituted a blockade of Spartan shipping in the summer of 429 BC. However, Sparta began preparing a sizable fleet and army to attack the Athenian contingent in the area, hoping to overrun the area around Naupactus and capture the islands of Zakynthos and Cephallenia. When the Spartan fleet began moving along the south shore of the Corinthian Gulf, and you can see the route they took, they were aiming to cross over to the western mainland. The Athenians from Naupactus, they followed along the north shore and met them once they passed out to the Gulf into the open sea, where the Spartans attempted to cross from the south to the north. You can see there. So the Spartans spent the night at Patras. Their fleet consisted of 47 triremes and many smaller support ships. Only 5 triremes were prepared for naval battle. The rest of them were slower troop carriers. So the next morning, before dawn, the Spartans left Patras and headed north. Phormio met them at sea with his 20 triremes. The Spartans, upon seeing Phormio's fleet, responded with the Kyklos, the circle. So one of the defensive formations that they did was to form a circle with their prows facing out. So they would be there while the enemy was circling them. And if they were good with their triremes, they would dart out and hit the enemy. But here it was a different story. Phormio with his ships circled around the Spartan fleet, driving the circle ever tighter and causing them to collide with each other and create confusion. He also knew from his knowledge of the local weather that the morning breeze would soon add to the confusion, causing more trouble for the inexperienced Spartans. This is how Thucydides, the historian, tells us what happened next. As the breeze freshened, the ships which were already in a constricted space were beginning to fall into confusion from the simultaneous effect of the wind and of the smaller vessels, and ship was jostling ship, and poles were being used to keep them apart. And as the seamen were shouting and taking evasive action and abusing each other, so that they were not listening out for the words of command or for the captains, and as the ill-trained oarsmen, being unable to recover their oars in the choppy water, made the ships unresponsive to the helm, at that precise moment Phormio gave the signal, and the Athenians, moving in to ram, first sank one of the flagships, and then went on with the intention of putting the rest of the ships out of action as they fell in their path. The result was that in the confusion, none of the ships turned to fight, but they all fled to Patras. The Athenians pursued and captured 12 ships, having put out of action at least one other in the engagement. So that goes. Now, a few months later, Spartans responded. Actually, what they did, they sent 3 new generals, 3 new admirals to help the Climus, the admiral who was running the fleet and the army in the area. And they assembled 77 ships this time. And they were prepared for naval battle, determined to destroy Phormio's 20-ship squadron and open their way to Western Greece. The two fleets were facing each other at anchor by the narrows of Rheum. The Athenians anchored at the northern shore and the Spartans anchored at the southern shore. In the battle that followed, the Spartans drew the Athenians out of their anchorage and by sailing into the Gulf of Corinth, moving as if to attack the Athenian base at Naupactus, which lay undefended. The Athenians were forced to shadow the Spartans, sailing eastwards along the northern shore of the Gulf. The 20 Athenian ships were sailing in single file along the northern shore. When you sail single file, you are very easy to be attacked on, especially by a bigger fleet, and that's what the Spartans did. Seeing the Athenians in the Gulf and sailing in single file, the Spartan admiral gave the signal for the ships to attack. The Spartan fleet turned at once and raced across the Gulf at the Athenians. The Athenians attempted to flee, but only the 11 leading ships were able to slip around the Peloponnesian right wing and flee towards Naupactus. The remaining 9 were cornered, driven ashore, and captured, while the 20 elite Peloponnesian ships from the right wing set out after the fleeing Athenian 11. 10 of the 11 Athenian ships reached Naupactus safely and took up positions at the mouth of the harbor, prows facing outwards, ready to defend against any attempt to enter the harbor. The last Athenian ship was fleeing towards the harbor, with the Spartans pursuing it closely, already singing the victory song. The Athenian Trireme came alongside a merchant ship. You see the merchant ship there, anchored outside the harbor, and using the merchant ship to protect her flanks while she turned, the Athenian captain spun his ship 180 degrees and rammed the leading pursuer on the side, disabling it. Although the Spartans still held great numerical advantage, the shock of the single action, which disheartened the Peloponnesian crews and reinvigorated the Athenians, proved sufficient to turn the tide of the battle. Confusion set in among the Spartans. Some rowers in leading ships dropped their oars to allow the main body to catch up with them, and leaving themselves immobile and vulnerable in the front of the Athenian enemy. Other ships ran aground because of their captain's ignorance of the coastline. The 10 Athenian ships in the harbor rushed out and joined in the attack. The Athenians captured 6 ships in the pursuit and recovered 8 of their 9 lost ships earlier. The surprising victory preserved Athens' naval dominance and kept Naupactus secure. So that's the story of the battle, how the Athenians were able to turn it around. Now, there is an interesting comment here that I would like to make. Let's go back, sorry. So there is a romanticized story of the last event told by John Hale, the one you saw earlier describing the Athenian ship attacking the enemy, in his book, The Lords of the Sea. He's saying that the trireme that turned around the merchant ship was anchored in the Naupactus harbor was none other than the official Athenian state trireme, the Paralos. The Paralos was a sacred ship the Athenians used for all kinds of missions, but Phormio, according to the story, Phormio himself was on the Paralos and the one who conceived of the maneuver. The story also goes a step further, that the triarch of the Spartan ship that was pursuing the Paralos was Triremes, the commander of the Spartan fleet, and that pursued the retreating Athenians. As the story goes, Triremes was so stunned by what happened, he lost his head, he lost his mind. For the Spartan commander, the shock and shame were too great. He drew his sword, braced it against the deck with the point towards his heart, and fell forward. A moment later, his lifeless body toppled over the railing and pitched into the sea. So that's a story I cannot confirm. I haven't seen it anywhere else, but that's the description of the battle. I hope